Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I get to learn a little bit about somebody else's perspective on movies. And I have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, and this is apparently also my 120th episode doing this, which, my God, it's been doing this for over 2 years. But my friend Jojo, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, and we're going to be talking some movies. So, Jojo, this is Jojo's second time on the show. So, I like to ask other questions because obviously that would be boring if it's the same exact ones. But I like to call these couple of questions the watch list type movies. So, Jojo, what's a film that has previously been released that you'd be most excited to check out?
So this just makes me think about how far behind I am on things. However, because of the
Mhm.
reviews, the new Black Panther movie, I have
Mhm.
to watch it anyway to stay involved in that universe. And
Uh-huh.
obviously, I was going to watch it, but I feel more pressure to watch it because everyone around me is seeing it, and I
Okay.
still have not. So
I loved it. I'm pretty disappointed because I've seen a lot of people just being like, "Oh, it was all right." I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" But like, I thought it was a great sequel, and honestly, you're gonna potentially feel some things because there's obviously a lot of baggage with this movie, both like real life baggage of Chadwick Boseman passing away and not being a part of it, and then also how they translate that into the movie. And to your point, Jojo, apparently this one's going to be potentially linking into two new Marvel movies, the Thunderbolts and New Captain America. So I guess it is important to kind of keep up with everything,
right.
isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
It's how Disney gets you. Just like you miss one thing, and then you're like, what the hell's happening?
I
So,
just got Disney Plus to watch all of the series that are happening. And I'm
mhm.
like, I'm so far behind.
Yeah, because it's like WandaVision, Falcon the Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight,
hmm
um, Miss Marvel, and both the Werewolf by Night and the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, which literally just came out like 2 days ago. So, and I probably missed one somewhere in there, but
She-Hulk.
She Hulk, I I knew I missed something. I'm like, Miss Marvel definitely was not the most recent one. What the hell? And that's the craziest one because that had the most people talking about it recently. Because a lot of people had a lot of strong feelings about She Hulk. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. And also like a lot of people complaining about it, and also a lot of interesting people having a lot of feelings about She-Hulk, especially a
Mm.
lot of men on TikTok. It was also a very interesting thing.
I think that's one of the reasons why I have been reluctant to watch it,
Mm-hmm.
but I know I will. I will. Out of all those series, I'm only caught up on no, three of those that you
Mm-hmm.
listed. So that is scary. But yeah, I think some of the commotion around it has made me not excited to watch it, which sucks because it's other people's opinions that are kind of like being like, well, maybe I don't want to see it.
Yeah. A lot of people, I know a lot of people complaining about it and saying it wasn't very good. I really enjoyed it. I had fun with it. And then there's a lot of people who loved She Hulk for other reasons too.
So I'll just hold on to the fact that you had fun with it, and I'll think of that when I watch it.
Go in with the expectation that you're going to watch a rom com because really what it is, and a it's a legal procedural show because she's a lawyer, but it's also about her romantic life. So,
I don't
and
like rom com, but that's okay.
that's the thing too because people are like, this isn't a superhero show. I'm like, it's based off a comic book character. It's like some of these people actually want to have lives and like relationships that aren't just them beating up people and being brooding. Like, see, Captain America, he tried to date. It's just like nobody flipped out about that. Oh, him and Peggy. Uh, But like She-Hulk wants to go out on dates and sleep around, and then everybody loses their mind. So there you go. But now, kind of flipping this question, Jojo, what's a film coming out soon that you're interested in seeing?
When's John Wick 4 coming out?
March.
Cool.
Yep.
That. Which is funny because when I saw the first one, I was like, okay, like whatever. I wasn't too excited about it just because I think at the time I was like comparing it to a few other like fighting action like
Mhm.
Rage Redemption and stuff, which is just really good. And I was like,
Yeah.
more of that. But then I like started watching the rest with like my brother. I was like, okay, like this is amusing. I'm having fun. It's
Mhm.
entertaining. And so now committed, obviously.
Mhm.
Talking about a brooding character, right?
John Wick. Uh, this is Keanu Reeves's wheelhouse. This is where Keanu Reeves needs to be, and he does it well. And like doesn't talk much, and he just beats the holy crap out of a whole lot of people. Which the crazy thing is, Keanu Reeves can do those things for real.
Yeah.
Which good for him being committed to that. But yeah, I'm a huge John Wick fan, and they just keep progressively getting like, oh my god, this is nuts. And that most the new trailer, we were before we started recording, we were talking about Top Gun Maverick, and I mentioned I went to that for my bachelor party. John Wick Chapter 4 was originally supposed to come out that weekend.
Hmm.
And my brother's like, what we're gonna do for your bachelor party is John Wick. And I'm like, it got pushed back a year. And he's like, what the F? So we saw Top Gun instead, which was great. But I definitely will be seeing John Wick Chapter 4, which, yes, it comes out in March. Very excited as well. But to be perfectly frank, that might be one of the movies I'm most excited about next year. So I just love them. I'm a big fan of action movies. Now, this is always an interesting question because I hear a lot of people complaining about that they just keep remaking every movie. But Jojo, what's a movie you actually want to see remade?
And I think this also ties into another question, possibly later. So I think in the 60s, The Stranger, which was originally written by Albert Camus, came out, right?
Mhm.
I loved that story for whatever reason when I had to read it
Mhm.
middle school or something like that. I don't remember why I liked it so much. However, I think this would be interesting to be remade almost like in modern times
Mhm.
because like essentially it's about someone who's just like very upset with how their life is, pretty bored essentially, and it's about to go into crisis. And if that is not the storyline of what like the last 3 years has been in the world, like I would love to see a modern take on that, but also playing in like obviously the psychological factors of what the world has been and how like some people are absolutely losing it. Like I think it's unfortunately a story that is still happening and it isn't really just like pinned to one kind of person. It's obviously several factors, but mostly like external factors that kind of force people into actions that they wouldn't normally do.
Mhm.
So I would love to see that remade, but with like a modern twist, so to say.
It's interesting because you're right. I I see it every day working at a college, seeing a bunch of young people who did not adjust well to the pandemic. And like it's interesting because like in general I'm more of an introverted person, and like I didn't like I still am able to socialize with people now, but like it wasn't as hard as an adjustment. But like I know some people that are straight extroverts, and it was not a good time, like just being away from everybody. I also know some really introverted people that just thrived.
Yeah.
Like my one friend, I won't say who it is. He's just like, I don't have to make any plans with anybody, and I could just hang out and do my thing. Okay, and that's what he did. And some of my friends, they never have to go back into the office ever again because it's just remote now, and they're like, okay, I love this. Um, but it's been such a hard adjustment for people, and that sounds like a very interesting take to have, especially with the context of like the world that we had lived in for the past couple years, and slowly coming out of it. But it's very interesting. I would potentially triggering, but I think would be a very interesting watch.
Yeah, definitely come with a warning for sure.
It's just like you will feel personally attacked by the experiences in this movie.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of going from not socializing at all and actually going out and go to the movies, but Jojo, what's your fondest memory of going to the movies?
So we were talking a little bit, before about how the movies, unfortunately theaters aren't as crowded as they
Mhm.
used to be. But one of my fondest memories was um, I don't know how old I was. I still lived in New York at the time, and our movie theater was obviously attached to like a big, big mall
Yeah.
that was always crowded. And I remember the overflow was into the food court, like the mall's food court.
Mhm.
And I remember what's Jack Frost? Is that the movie where the dad turns into a snowman?
Michael Keaton turns into a snowman. Yes.
So it was that movie, and I remember we were supposed to meet our cousins, and they didn't make it in, and the theater was packed. Like, which
Mhm.
just there was no more tickets. They couldn't get in. Nothing. Just rows and rows and rows of people. And I remember coming out and seeing everyone waiting in the food court to get into the next showing. It, you were just like staring at like what felt like hundreds of eyes. I remember walking out and my mom being like, "Oh my gosh, this movie must be so popular." But there's just so many people, and I don't think I've felt that since. Maybe the last time was probably one of like the Avenger movies,
Yeah.
like people going and dressing up, but still like the I can't explain what the overflow was of people just waiting, like not waiting in their cars, not waiting in shopping, waiting to make sure that they got a seat.
Yeah. It's such an interesting change in the theater experience as well that doesn't really leave you open to that anyway. Because so much of it, like, I know I don't buy my ticket when I go to the movies. I have my
Mhm.
lovely AMC app, and it's all reserved seating now. So, like, you just, oh, I got a seat. And then some jerk still try to take your seats. Looking at one couple that tried to take my seat at the She Said that I saw last weekend. I just walk in behind them. I'm right behind them, and they go into my row, and I'm like, this is weird because the row only has 4 seats in it. And they sit right where I had my ticket. I'm like, excuse me, this is my seat. And they like scoffed at me and like got up begrudgingly and went 4 rows down. I'm like, didn't you have tickets? Like,
Yeah, I guess you can't really sneak into movies either anymore, right?
well, staffing wise, you probably can because there's like nobody working at the theater. Um,
Yeah.
But that's such an interesting experience because, like, especially with the reserve seating, it's like you don't really need to sit and wait. It's like you either got a ticket or you didn't. And that just reminds me of like, I remember the first Avengers movie being in college and going with 15 people.
Hmm.
And you had to go and wait in line to get a seat because you didn't want to wind up in the front row. Now you just, the second they sell the tickets, you just click the seats that you want to sit in and
Right.
stuff like that. But like, we got there 2 hours early, and this was also back when they only showed midnight showings. Because now, like
Yeah.
I remember seeing Godzilla, um, King of All Monsters or whatever at 4:30 on a Thursday opening night. Opening night,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, why is there 4:30 showing? But like that's how it used to be, and it was a midnight premiere. We showed up 10 p.m. We are AMC Hamilton, and we took up like a whole middle row in this giant theater, and we're just like messing around for an hour, sitting in our seats, and shenanigans happened because my friend Ed was speaking in a British accent for a week for some reason, was yelling at people in the theater. I'm like, you're gonna get your ass kicked tonight. But like, see, you wouldn't have those fun moments if you had if you have to wait for your seat. So, but that's so interesting because yeah, you don't see that anymore. And
No.
the thing is, even with like the Marvel movies, they offer so many show times now at theaters because they're the ones that make money. They don't really lose out on getting a seat at a movie. So the it's sad. I remember those days, but that's crazy. I know down the road there's a Regal attached to the Morristown Mall and dumps you right on the food court. So it's like you're just chilling, you get food, and then you hop in and go to the movie because you don't want to spend $20 on whatever food they have.
Right.
So, but oh, and I also remember Jack Frost. I used to watch that a lot when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure I had that on VHS at some point. Um,
VHS.
yeah, there we go. They used to be tapes, and you had to rewind them. Uh,
Amazing.
what a different time it was. But Jojo, what's a film that really exceeded your expectations?
The Outfitter. I watched it last week, and so I had been wanting to see it from the trailer because I was like, I think that's Dylan O'Brien, and I love Dylan O'Brien.
Oh yeah,
So I was like, okay, I have to watch. But then I couldn't tell, like, was it more like mobster? Was it mystery? Was it just telling a story? So when it first started, I was like, oh, okay, like I genuinely liked all of the characters. I was like,
yeah.
okay, I can enjoy this. And then as it went on, I was like, now I'm actually involved. Now I'm very interested. So by the time I got to the end, I was like, ooh, yeah, I'm happy I watched it. Like,
That's a movie that I wish more people saw this year because like that came out, I think like probably in like March or something like that, and really flew under the radar. But I know it wound up on Peacock. I think it was one of the streaming services. But like
yeah,
I remember seeing the trailer being like, it's Mark Rylance, and there seems to be some kind of devious things going on. This could potentially
right.
be interesting, and it was an interesting movie, and yeah, I think Dylan O'Brien popped up in that, and I think he was in Bullet Train too. Um, but to be honest, the tricky thing is if you're going into both of those movies for the Dylan O'Brien, you're not gonna get a ton of them.
I
So
know. I'll take
and
anything I can get.
there you go. Maze Runner's done. Have to find him somewhere else now.
Well,
So
I used to watch Teen Wolf on MTV in
okay,
high school, and he was like a big character in that.
okay.
That's where I was first introduced to him. Him and his YouTube videos. He was just like, I don't know, like a random comedy YouTuber doing his own skits. Before YouTubing, I guess, was a thing,
And then I guess
or before
Maze
they started
Runner
making
and
millions the way they do
Teen Wolf
now.
blew up, and then he became like a legit actor. Crazy thing, he almost died filming the
I
last
know,
Maze Runner movie. So
right? Yeah,
things are dangerous, doing all
yeah.
kinds of crazy stunts and stuff like that. Now, I think this was the question that you might have been alluding to earlier, but what's a written work that you'd be interested in seeing adapted into a film?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It would still be that.
It sounds really interesting. This is a tricky question because, like, I go into these like I don't know who's like really a reader or not, and like some people just like don't read a whole lot. And I was sitting recording with my friend Joe last night, doing this same set of questions, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't really read," and I'm sitting there like, "Comic books count, Joe. It is written,"
Uh,
and then he's like, "Oh, then," and then I got some really interesting answers to this question, like, because like basically anything written, like there's movies that movie Zola that came out last year was, or that might have been this summer. I don't remember. It was based off of a Reddit thread or a Twitter thread, something like somebody being like, "This weekend happened," and this crazy story, and I'm just like, you know what? Craziest things turn into movies. So,
yeah.
but that sounds like an interesting book too. I might have to check that out. I'm in the process of buying some new books after I finally read the giant pile of them that I had building up for 3 years. So there you go. Um, Now, kind of shifting gears into some other aspects around film, but you know, you go to the movies, you sit through 20, 30 minutes of trailers. But Jojo, what's your favorite movie trailer?
I don't know. I think it's still going to be Inception, which I feel like is a cop out because in
Mhm.
our last discussion, I feel like my answer was Inception for everything. But for whatever reason, I don't know what I was going through in my life, and it just stuck with me.
Mhm.
But, and not to get like ahead of myself, it was because of the music.
Yep, alluding to other questions, but yeah, it's I that like realistically any Christopher Nolan trailer that comes out, it's just like, what is this? And that Inception trailer was nuts. Like cities folding in on themselves, and they're like, what is going on here? And then, of course, the bomb
Mhm.
debuted. Hans Zimmer just coming in there with that music. And then, of course, every other big movie has used the really obnoxious
Right.
bombastic music of Hans Zimmer again. But like that really like Inception trailer, the Interstellar trailer, Tenant, and however you feel about any of those movies, those trailers just were like, what is going on here? I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to be honest, I'm at the point now. I'm sitting in a theater. It was actually before Nope. When I went to go see Nope earlier this year, I'm sitting there. The theater gets dark, like the screen gets dark, and then all of a sudden, Syncope pops up on the screen, and I'm just like, because that's Christopher Nolan's production company. I'm like, oh my god, it's an Oppenheimer trailer, and I'm like the only person in the theater getting excited just by seeing the logo of a production company, but I'm like, I know what's coming. And I don't know, they just know how to market the movies, and like Inception turned out to be one of the craziest, most inventive big budget movies, period. So it was a good choice.
Yay.
There you go. You did not need my reassurance on that, but I
I
offered
just
it
feel like it's
anyway.
the same for everything.
Huh?
That's why I feel bad.
You do not need anybody's reassurance for anything. These are all your feelings and they're all valid. So now, what's your favorite use of a song in a movie?
So I think I'm gonna default to Ragnarok. All of the song choices. It was just fun. Like
Hmm.
no matter what was going on, the music was like, cued in perfectly. I think I think obviously like it did its job in either making you excited or
Yep.
like, you know, on edge. But for whatever reason, that just sticks out like Ragnarok, all of the music. Which is funny because like I grew up on rock, but I would say more grunge or industrial, like Nine Inch Nails and
Yeah.
stuff.
And not like Led Zeppelin whipping in
No,
there with Immigrant Song.
no. My dad was more moody. So
There you go.
really
He
grunge,
wasn't
metal,
sitting there.
industrial.
Yeah, he wasn't sitting there listening to real like 60s, 70s classic rock music about Norse mythology like Immigrant Song. Uh See, Led Zeppelin were a bunch of nerds. They made songs about Lord of the Rings, they made songs about Norse mythology, and then
Right.
also your standard rock music songs about getting drunk, doing drugs, and sleeping with people. So there you go. But yeah, Immigrant Song, that was perfect. And oh, that moment when Hell is just like, what are you the god of again, brother? And he just like shoots that lightning down and just strikes him. And then he's just jumping through the air, and Immigrant Song just starts playing. I'm like, oh, I saw that with my brother Ethan and my our other brother John, and the three of us sitting in that theater just being like, oh my god, such a
Yeah.
fun time. And like Taika Waititi did it again in Thor: Love and Thunder with like
Yeah.
what Sweet Child of Mine he kept playing, and then November Rain. I'm like, what's with all the Guns N' Roses?
Yeah.
But
That's true.
he has a knack for that. He even I don't know if you've seen a lot of his like pre doing Marvel and Star Wars stuff, but like even his first film Boy, they have a whole entire musical number in the credits where they're doing Thriller.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Okay.
So Taika Waititi has an ear for music. And now, not actual songs, but compositions and like score and stuff like that. But Jojo, if you're gonna like take a score and put it on and listen to it, what's that score gonna
Yeah, so Inception or
be?
or that's a straight from Christopher Nolan, but it would be The Dark Knight Rises.
I remember, speaking of trailers and speaking of Christopher Nolan trailers, that music in that Dark Knight Rises trailer with like those people chanting in the background and stuff like that. I'm just like, oh my
Right.
God, what is this gonna be?
Yeah.
And Hans Zimmer really knows how to make some big, bold music for movies. And it's very interesting because Tenet had Ludwig Göransson do the score for it, and it definitely sounded different. And I was definitely expecting a Hans Zimmer score because, like, at this point, you just expect Hans Zimmer if you're watching a Christopher Nolan movie. And whether if he's doing like big horns, like an Inception and stuff like that, or he cranks out an organ in Interstellar, which that's one of my favorite scores. I'll listen to that organ all day. But like, there's some Hans Zimmer is obviously one of the most acclaimed composers out there, and he sure knows how to get a lot of feeling and emotion out of you.
Yeah. It's so I'm gonna forget his name. It's Zach something. I don't think
Snyder.
he did the song for the trailer for Inception, which was the song that got me first interested. But then
Mm.
that the whole rest, obviously, I listened to, obviously.
You know what? I can't remember what the actual song was. I just trailers love to get like songs and make like really moody covers of them and then throw them into it. And like even like, did you see the new Batman movie?
Yes.
The Batman. Oh,
Yes.
speaking of moody, like
Yeah.
speaking of grungy, like I feel like all the music is like that era
It is
rock music, and it's just like I'm depressed and very sad and very
right.
moody right now. Really
It was
fitted
very
though. Gotham in that movie was creepy and also
gritty. Yeah.
yes, very gritty. Now, Jojo, my last question for you is: what's one thing that you wish movies would stop doing?
Well, I know movies can't stop remaking other movies.
Or you could take that as like you would wish that they would just like the movie industry and like people making movies. So that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. That or I don't know, maybe and again, I'm pulling from the top of the list. So I'm sure there's tons of movies that I just haven't been exposed to. But I feel like once something clicks, there's like four or five iterations of it. Like for a while, like I think there was a thing in like teen movies and rom-coms about like I guess the story of always being like the nerd going for like the cute guy is a thing, but I feel like that they all started to look the same. I don't know, just like kind of switching up like even the scenery or the time that it takes place, things like that. Like after a while I feel like I look at things, I'm like, oh well, it kind of all looks the same now to me.
And we're entering a very specific time of year where there's a lot of that going on. Because like how many damn Christmas rom-coms can you possibly make that are just the same movie?
Have you seen the meme of the Hallmark movies? And it has like the cover for all of them. And the girl always wears red, the guy wears green. They're all in the same pose. They all look the same. It's the meme is hilarious. It's like each title's like an iteration of itself. It's amazing. But that's exactly what I feel like it is.
Well, and I was literally having this conversation with my friend Joe last night about we've gotten to the point like cinema's been around since the late 1800s, been making movies since then. And after a while, it's really hard to make something original. And it's also especially hard when like what's the lesson that producers and studios learn is that oh somebody likes this, we'll make money if we make the same exact thing. And just like I'd prefer you to make something different, but I guess we'll take what we can get. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting experience. But Disney just keeps making all their remaking all their animated movies because they make
Yeah.
millions of dollars. Like seeing Strange World yesterday, they had the Little Mermaid trailer. And like, which literally all it is just Ariel showing up and started singing one of the songs. I'm just sitting there like, I really wish that I could just go in and watch this movie and enjoy it without thinking about all the online discourse around this movie of why the
Yeah.
hell, why do we have a black mermaid? And I'm just like, mermaids aren't real. So
Right.
who gives a crap?
Right. Yeah.
And
Right.
then all the fun videos of people trying to scientifically explain why it wouldn't make sense for a mermaid to have darker skin. I'm just, please don't. Just like, this is a fantasy. It's literally a singing mermaid. They have talking crabs. And the flounder looks like a cute fish and doesn't look like something out of your nightmares, like an actual flounder. So,
Right.
like, where's the disconnect here? So,
Right.
but yeah, they're just gonna like Hercules is getting remade. Lilo and Stitch is getting remade.
Really?
Yep, 2024 coming out.
Hmm. That's interesting. I don't know why I thought only, I mean, like, yes, I know it's animated, but I guess because it already involved humans, I just didn't think about it. Also, because for me, okay, so all the ones before, they didn't come out with me, right? Or I was like very, very young.
Yeah,
But I remember Lilo and Stitch coming out. So I guess for whatever reason, I kind of separated them like, oh, only like the old ones are gonna get remade, not
nope. They're coming for the movies that came out in the 2000s too. I'm waiting for Emperor's New Groove to
I
get
love that movie.
remade.
I love that movie.
I do too. Oh man, if they do, Patrick Warburton better be in it because I don't want any other Kronk in my life besides.
That voice is very important.
You need to be Kronk, and I don't want any other Kronk. But which is funny, a lot of them kind of look like their characters a little bit. So hey, John Goodman can totally be well. You know, this takes place in Peru, so probably not. So, but that wouldn't
Right.
stop anybody, right? But very interesting. They're just going to keep remaking movies if they think they can make money off of it. Which remake bad movies. Like, why do we need a Lion King?
Make them good.
That would make sense. They would be the movies that are like, hey, this had a really cool idea, but didn't work out well. Let's give it another try. Instead of Lion King's perfect. Let's remake
Right.
that one. Oh, because
Yeah.
it made $1.7 billion. That's why. So, because we all saw it anyway.
Oh, yeah. It's a loyalty thing it becomes.
It's just like, had to see it. I've seen all of them. So, well, to be fair, I see everything. So, I'm not really a great gauge of that. But. But, JoJo, I always like to wrap up this show by letting my guests ask me a question. So, what would you like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
Did you see the movie Men?
I did.
What were your thoughts?
Did you see Men?
I did.
I left that movie. Well, so I had a 30-minute conversation with my friend Paige. So like I had a press screening of that. And I got to invite my wife Jess and our friend Paige, and we were all saw it together. Paige and I had a very spirited discussion for 30 minutes straight afterwards. And because like it was my feelings on the film were I thought it was really interesting. It was really messed up. And it definitely had a lot to say. And my God, Roy Keener, just disgusting in like 50 different forms in that movie. I thought it was great. I'm a huge fan of Alex Garland because like I love Ex Machina, Annihilation, And watching this film, it was different for him because usually he does science fiction. And like, I really loved it. And then I found out that like almost everybody else who saw it hated it. And then I'm just
Oh, really?
like a lot of the other people that I know that review movies and stuff like that absolutely hated it. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And I thought it was really compelling commentary on I like, here's the thing. Obviously, I am a man, so I don't live the life of a woman on a day to day basis. But I can imagine that in many ways it is as terrifying as what that movie made it feel like. Because, like, trust me, I've seen other men interact with women in those ways and just be like, bad touch all around. You know, the priest. And even like, one of the arguments that I had with Paige was about the guy renting the house because she didn't feel like he did anything particularly wrong. And then I'm just sitting there, but like he made a lot of microaggressions, like the asking about the husband thing, and like why does she need her husband to be there to like go off and have a time alone? It's like she's an adult; she could go do what she wants. And like the whole entire point was like he wasn't supposed to be like nefariously bad. It's just there's
Right.
certain things like it's little things, and obviously some of them were worse than others. Like that
Right.
priest was a bastard. But like
Yeah.
that, and then of course the last third of the movie, um, very interesting perspective on the perpetuation of behavior through generations
Yeah.
in the form of a birthing scene that just never ends. Because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's how I perceive that was the whole entire idea of like this isn't just a now problem, and it wasn't just a then problem. It's going to continue to be a future problem if
Right.
people don't change how they engage with people. And like
Yeah.
how I envision that is just like them regurgitating, like you're just gonna, if you have a son, you're gonna raise your son the way you were, and they're gonna act the way that you are, and then they just keep perpetuating those things. They just Alice Garland chose to portray it in probably one of the most disturbing ways possible,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I felt really dirty by the end of the movie, just being like, "Oh my!"
Yeah.
But
I
what were your thoughts?
so at first I pure confusion
Yeah,
with bits of like understanding, like I could follow it and I got where it was going. And then I think like obviously throughout, so I am a woman, but I think I can say I have not been in many scary situations that other women have been in
mm-hmm.
pertaining to encounters with, specific kinds of men. Obviously not all men. And I think similar as you say, I think honestly the guy who owned the house, I think he for the most part of the movie was just showing like how certain things are built in. Like I don't think
Yeah,
anything was done maliciously, but like helping someone with their bags, even after they refuse across the board, whether it's a woman or not, like you don't do that. Certain things
yeah,
like that, but they become built in, and that's the generational aspect. So this is a movie I took to like YouTube after to get
yeah,
like other people's analysis because I wasn't even thinking about the colors used, like how they had her dress, the background and stuff.
yeah,
And that's something that other people who watched it and just kind of spoke about. And I was like, wow, like everything in the movie is a uterus. Everything's the color of like a uterus, the room she's in, things like that. But I think for me, I understand some things had to be more obvious, and therefore it made it seem like all men do this, or this happens more often than not, which
yeah,
isn't true. And I don't think that's what the movie was trying to say. And I'm not sure if that's why some of the other critics like didn't like it. But I appreciated it. I genuinely appreciated it, not just because I'm a woman and not necessarily like because she wasn't always a damsel in distress. Like I think she was like your average like person. She saw something strange and she wasn't just like, ah, help me. you
Yeah.
know, she was being followed in the woods and she ran, like, so things like that I really appreciated. But there were some aspects where I was like, okay, yes, I can see someone getting upset because this seems so blatant and like this happens in this way. And no, we're also not birthing men
There's
the way
also a
the
hint
left.
of fantasy here, obviously, because like there's some weird stuff that
Right.
happened in this movie.
Right, exactly. But I think by the end of it, I really appreciated it. I recommended it to a friend, and the only way I can say, look, it's disturbing. I
Yeah.
was like, so don't watch it if you're happy, but if you feel like watching a movie and then having a conversation with the person next to you about it, watch it.
Oh, I certainly had a conversation with one of the people next to me the whole entire ride home. So, because like we saw it in Philly, so it was like a 30-minute drive back to my house. It was just like
Yeah.
full conversation. And I love Jessie Buckley. So like I was really happy to see her in that. She's one of my favorite actresses right now. But yeah, it's an experience. It is quite a film. And it was funny because Jess is so into all kinds of weird stuff and like folk stuff. And like she pointed out who that deity was right away that it was
Wow.
related to and everything. Cause like the Green Man stuff, and she knows all the kinds of stuff like that. So and so like there's that layer to it and everything. So and also that whole entire flashback with her husband, my God, I have felt there's very few times I felt more uncomfortable watching an interaction between a married couple than watching that sequence in that movie. But
Yeah.
if you haven't seen Men, if you want to go talk about something, make you definitely want to go talk about it. So go check it out. But Jojo, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.